So today I thought I would do a random record pull video. Haven't done one before. I can't really call it whack-a-mole because I think Mazzy owns copyright on that. And bonk a squirrel doesn't sound quite right. I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll do the Discogs randomizer shaker thing. Can't do that because Brian over at Embryonic Robot does that. Also doesn't work because I'd have to do it on my phone, and I film on my phone. So what am I going to do? Well, I just went through my records and pulled a few that I have never shown before. So random, but not random. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. So, I'm going to show you just a handful of records that I haven't shown before. Not random, but sort of random. Took a look, and there's a bunch I've never talked about before. So, there's no theme to this. There's no thread of continuity that weaves through the records I'm going to show today, but they're just, I think 5 or 6 records here that I just think are interesting, and I thought I would share them with you today. The first one I'm going to show is a very obscure record. That's not why I'm showing it. I'm showing it because it's fantastic. So this is an album by a band called Greylands, and it's called Songs by Other People. Greylands isn't a band per se. It's a guy. It's Wayne Petty, who I know personally. He fronted a band called Cuff the Duke, which are these guys. Cuff the Duke, kind of on indefinite hiatus. They were a great alt country rock band from Toronto for well over a decade. They're phenomenal. I call them a hometown band, although they were formed in Oshawa, Ontario. A couple members live in my town, and Wayne lives in the next town down the highway. So I have always been a huge Cuff the Duke fan, but Wayne did a side project under the moniker of Greylands. This came out in 2014 on Paper Bag Records, which is a small label in Toronto. I only pressed 300 copies of this. This is number 134. And what's really interesting about this is songs by other people. They're songs that Wayne likes, I guess, by other artists and he's covered them. And the very interesting thing about this is not only has he covered songs by other people, he has other people duetting on all of these songs with him. So just to give you an idea of the people that guested on here, some of these may only mean something if you're familiar with Canadian music. Hayden, Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo, Sarah Harmer, Julie Fader, Randy Bachman from BTO and the Guess Who, Joel Plaskett, who I've talked about on this channel before. And the songs, some of the songs that are covered on here, I won't go over all of them, but My Back Pages, Bob Dylan, Dream Tree, Buffy St. Marie, UFO by Jim Sullivan. That's a cool psychedelic song from late 60s, I think, early 70s. Sand by Lee Hazelwood. The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore, which was really originally a Frankie Valli song, and then it was covered by, I'm having a brain fart, I can't remember who covered it, and it was a big success. Girl from the North Country by Bob Dylan. So it's kind of it's a very cool record in that they're covers that Wayne does with other artists. And it's you know, they're sort of true to their originals, but they also kind of have Wayne's sort of alt country spin on it at the same time. One other thing about this record that I like, it's on some Cool transparent blue vinyl. Very hard to find record nowadays, but still a really, really enjoyable album. Wayne did a second Greylands album as well, but the first one is the best, for sure. Now we're going to go all the way back to the 60s. I am a big fan of the band. Talked about them a lot, but I'm not going to show something by the band. I'm fortunate enough to have an original pressing of Mr. Dynamo by Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. For those that are familiar with the band, needs no explanation. For those that aren't familiar with the connection, Ronnie Hawkins was a rock and roll, rockabilly singer from Arkansas, Louisiana, somewhere in the South. And he had a band called the Hawks. He heard about a great bustling music scene in Toronto. So he moved north with the Hawks. Except, as I understand the story, the only member of the Hawks that actually came with him was his drummer, a man named Levon Helm. Yes, from the band. When Ronnie and Levon got to Toronto, they recruited some locals from Woodstock, Ontario, which is about 40 minutes that way from where I live, to form that incarnation of Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. And they would ultimately go on to back Bob Dylan, and then they would become the band, and the rest is history. So this is an album that was recorded when they were still down in the South. So it's just Ronnie and Levon and an assortment of other players. So this is an enjoyable early rock and roll, rockabilly kind of album. I have it more for historical significance because I'm a huge fan of the band. When I saw this at a pretty reasonable price, I had to buy it. Ronnie Hawkins remained in Canada for the rest of his life, lived not too far from Toronto, was friends with John Lennon. John would come and visit him in Toronto. Died several years ago. I think he lived in Peterborough, Ontario, which is not too far from here. So if you like the band, this is kind of where it started. This is kind of an interesting record from the 80s that probably not a lot of people are aware of. This is the Northern Lights, and it's a song called Tears Are Not Enough. In the mid-80s, everyone probably remembers We Are the World, which was that big collaboration of Anyone Who Is Anyone, and it went to famine relief in Africa. Well, this was the Canadian answer to this. This was recorded on February the 10th, 1985 in Toronto. This was the brainchild of Bryan Adams and Jim Vallance. Jim Vallance is Brian's songwriting partner, along with producer David Foster, very famous producer. And we wanted to do the same as what had been done with We Are the World. So they assembled an incredible cast of who's who of Canadian music at that time. So not to name everybody, but Bryan Adams, Tom Cochrane, Bruce Cockburn, Burton Cummings from the Guess Who, Corey Hart, Ronnie Hawkins, who I just mentioned, Geddy Lee from Rush, Gordon Lightfoot, the legend of Canadian music, Richard Manuel from the band, Murray McLaughlin, Kim Mitchell, Joni Mitchell, Anne Murray, Aldo Nova, Mike Reno from Loverboy, Ian Thomas, Sylvia Tyson, Neil Young, Zappa Costa, to name but some. And so they recorded this song, Tears Are Not Enough, done in the same style as We Are the World. You know, everyone has a line and then they all come together. It's an interesting song. Unfortunately, mine has a tear down the front of the jacket, but I think I bought it for $1. And I bought it because, you know, I'm kind of a Canadian music guy, and it was a thing. I remember it back in the 80s when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And it's a Bryan Adams project, and I'm kind of everything he put out. So anyway, just kind of an interesting, not a novelty recording, but, many folks may not know that this exists outside of Canada. So the Northern Lights, Tears Are Not Enough. Next, I did a video a couple weeks ago about some of my father's records, and thank you everybody for watching that. The response has been incredible. A ton of people have watched it, so I'm very appreciative of that. The comments have been wonderful. This is another record that was my dad's, and it's an interesting one. The Best of the King Biscuit Flour Hour. King Biscuit Flour Hour was a radio show that ran from, I think, 73 to 93, something like that. And this is just I think this is 3 disc. I think 1, 2, 4 LP. This is a 4 LP, the best of, and, their live performances so that were recorded for radio broadcast. Queen, We Will Rock You. Robert Plant, In the Mood. Peter Frampton. Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. Elton John, Rocket Man. Bloody Well Right, Supertramp. Who Are You by The Who. Love's a Rose and When Will I Be Loved, Linda Ronstadt, my favorite female singer. Cats in the Cradle, Harry Chapin. Dreamer, Supertramp, Sweet Home Alabama, and Freebird, Leonard Skinner. And there's more. It's just I love live performances, so, this is great. And there's just some really awesome stuff on here. I'll give you an idea of what exactly is on here. This is just one that I liberated from Dad's collection. After he passed, I had to keep this because there's some great stuff on it. All right, another random one. This is from 2008, a band I really like, the Old 97s, old country / rock band, more of a rock band, I guess. I don't really know what they fall into. Rock band with a tinge of country, I guess. This is their 7th album from 2008. That's when I got into them. And I'm not sure how I was introduced to them, but this was the first album of theirs that I had heard, and there are some great songs in here. No Baby I, The Fool, Here's to the Halcyon. Great record. It's the one that I got turned on to first. Their biggest album was actually, I think, about a decade earlier. It was called Too Far to Care. I've got all their albums except I think the most recent 2. I still need to pick them up. I just haven't found them in the wild yet. But I bought this brand new, and let's do it a lot, actually. I really like this record. Probably Too Far to Care is my favorite, and then this one. But this was the album that was my gateway to the Old 97s. And the last one, I thought of you, Mike MGK Boston, when I was looking through the stack and I saw this. Mike's got a little bit of an affinity for country music, in addition to everything else that he listens to. This is a great singer-songwriter. I believe she's from Toronto, Lindy Ortega. She did some time in Nashville, and now she lives out in Western Canada. She's taken a hiatus from music for personal reasons, but she put out, I think, 5 or 6 albums. And this one came out in 2012. I think it's her best, Cigarettes and Truck Stops. It's a very sort of, it's kind of like 50s country. Like, it's kind of old country, which is not my thing. Doesn't normally do it for me. She recorded this in Nashville, and if I'm not mistaken, produced by Colin Linden, famous producer, member of Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. I've met Colin. He's a wonderful, kind man when I met him. How I got turned on to Lindy Ortega, she was doing a tour of Southern Ontario, and she didn't have a band, so she was being backed by the Dustin Bentall outfit, or maybe they were Dustin Bentall and the Smokes at that point. I know Dustin, and I was a huge fan of him and his band, and so I went to the concert to see them play with her, and they were also the opener. And I just really liked her set so much that I bought the album. Again, even though that kind of country is not my thing, but Mike, I think you would really like this, so you might want to look into this. There you go, folks. There's just a handful of random records or records I've never shown that are in my collection. Maybe you found something interesting in there. If you did, let me know in the comments. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Catch you on the flip side.